I never remember how to do it. So the first thing on our agenda is approval of the agenda, followed by a conflict of interest that I'll read in a second. We have a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Great. Conflict of interest reminder in accordance with the bylaws adopted by the Environmental and Stewardship Committee, Subcommittee members shall not vote on any matter where the outcome of the matter being considered is reasonably likely to have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact on the member or any matter involving a person with whom the member has a close familial, business, or other associational relationship. Is there any items of business on the agenda for which any member of this subcommittee is requesting refusal today? Seeing none. Going forward towards approval of the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Is there such a motion? So moved. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Public comment. In person or on the internet. Everyone. Hey.
Ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jason Corden, and I work with a company called Hatteras Sky. And probably importantly to the conversation, we own the Radical Hotel in the River Arts District, Film Mechanic Studios building that we've redone, and then we recently opened the Rendezvous all in the River Arts District. And then we also own the Zelda Dearest Hotel that's off of Biltmore. And a large part of our company here in Asheville is we want to develop more affordable housing, so we're working with some organizations working on that. We have a historic project we want to kick off next year downtown. And I'm here to speak in support of the CPACE program that's on the agenda for the commission. And just kind of highlight just three things. The first thing is I think it will be an important tool and that we will want to have as we recover here in Asheville. We have been speaking, our company has, with other kind of local companies in similar positions during the recovery and trying to aid those efforts. And there's a lot of momentum behind the program. It's a national program, it's understood, so it's nothing esoteric. It's not a panacea for everything, but it will, in my opinion, help assist businesses here who are trying to recover in terms of from the storm, but also in our business with like historic rehabilitation. The program allows for the funding of sustainability initiatives in those projects like windows, the entire envelope, the insulation around it, all the kind of things that are making the buildings more energy efficient. It's very expensive right now in the marketplace to get anything built. So this is an avenue for in your capital stack of a project to find a little bit of it that's at compelling cost so that it's making deals move forward. And so I just want to speak in support of that program. I'm not an expert in it because we're the beneficiaries of be and others. But I will say that there are an active market being put together for Asheville for CPACE, and that it will be used to be intended to use it.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all.
I recommend you at first. I was like, oh, great.
Thank for
I've got a lot of phone calls
Yeah,
to make
yeah.
today, but I really appreciate the time to come in and meet all of you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Y'all have a great weekend.
Love the Zelda Hotel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, everyone's invited. We need it. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And Rendezvous is really cool. It's beautiful studio space, so you can go online. I don't know the number, but dozens of new studios at very affordable prices. So the displacement numbers of artists is really going down, and when that went online, it like took a whole chunk out. So I think there's only like 100 or so rad artists that are still displaced actively. So that was a real leadership step from that group.
Cool. Any other public comment anywhere? Okay. Jackie, walk through the subcommittee report.
So, as everything found out, we should be doing an annual report for the subcommittee every year, and it's based on fiscal year. So, this is for, last fiscal year, and it just kind of highlights what we did, membership, all of that stuff. And so we don't have to like approve it as a subcommittee, but we just wanted to make you aware that it exists as a document. It's on our public input page if folks want to read it more carefully, but just wanted to take 5 minutes to quickly run through it.
Is it the kind of thing that would exist on the website for this committee too?
It's
Or could?
kind of buried under the, it could.
Yeah.
It's more for like just record keeping, so
Okay.
the clerk asked for it.
Okay, great.
So it just lists current membership, summary statement. This is just straight from our website, so nothing new here, same purpose, just kind of copy and pasted it. So just to kind of remind you all what that is, through thoughtful discussion and advisement from community and staff experts, the subcommittee recommends community-wide goals, establishes work plans, and tracks progress in areas of land conservation, renewable energy, and water quality. Subcommittee considers additional opportunities in the areas of conservation easement strategies, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, renewable energy development and access, preservation of farmlands and natural resources, solid waste management and recycling, air and water quality. And then it asks to highlight some activities and accomplishments from the last year. We didn't meet quite as frequently as we had in the past due to Helene, but there was some stuff to highlight, particularly stuff that was voted on. Sarah asked us to highlight, so we re-elected Commissioner Sloan and Councilman Holman as chair and vice chair, made a recommendation about the 5-year power purchase agreement with Duke for the landfill gas to energy project. The feedback on the strategic plan goals, and then kind of more generally heard about the CPA program, discuss options and opportunities for battery energy storage, reviewed strategies to divert waste from landfills, particularly around composting and C2B. Received updates on water quality monitoring and clean water fund projects. Discussed ongoing implementation of the loan loss reserve. Advised expansion of electric vehicle charging infrastructure within the community, and reviewed air quality monitoring and storm related impacts. So these are just some comments.
So we'll do this every year.
Yes. Some of the challenges we highlighted were obviously the hurricane and some of the shifts in federal administration and what that meant for us. And then some upcoming goals for 2026. So CPACE is one of them. Some of the stuff that we'll hear about today is as well. Any questions about that?
Thanks, Jackie. Mobility. Is it done?
Which Mount Mobility?
No. The zero emission, it's like.
Yeah. Okay, so super. I'm William High, Willoughby Transportation Planner for Buncombe County. Today we have Cole Pouliot with us from ECOM. 2 years ago, we kicked off a zero emissions vehicle plan with partnership with NCDOT. I would like to mention they paid for this study, so it didn't cost us anything, which is very kind of them. Given both the variety of management changes at NCDOT and AECOM and a few things that happened a year ago, we're just now getting here today. But with that, I'd like to introduce Cole, who led this study and did a great deal of work on it. And thank you for being here today, Cole, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you all so much. Very happy to be here, very happy to be part of the project. I have just a quick slide deck for y'all. Please let me know if you can see the slides.
We can see it.
Lights off.
Perfect. All right, can you see the slides or can you see the presenter view? I guess is a better question.
We can see your slides.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, William. Like I said, about 2 years ago, we kicked off a low and no emission vehicle study here for Mountain Mobility. Again, this was something that was funded and brought to you by the NCDOT's, the Integrated Mobility Division, and really commissioned us as AECOM to understand the feasibility of Mountain Mobility transition fleet to zero emission vehicles. And just evaluate other low emission opportunities that may aid in the process of reducing the fleet to reduce its carbon footprint. The process was very intense. We did, a facility evaluation. We did vehicle energy modeling of all the routes and services to understand what it would take to take your current service and do it with today's battery electric bus technology. We engaged many stakeholders in the county, in Asheville, the transit operator itself. We did a vehicle emissions modeling, financial modeling. It's a very detailed report. We can read, but I'm going to spare you guys a lot of those technical details and just kind of focus on the findings and recommendations that came out of the report. Based on the type of vehicles that you guys operate, being smaller vehicles, as many of you know, with electric vehicles, one of the biggest challenges is range. And the buses that Mountain Mobility operates covers a lot of miles and a lot of range. And the smaller vehicles themselves, because they can't really store a lot of batteries, really struggle with range. And so once we did all of our modeling to understand, we determined that it would take, you'd have to increase the Mountain Mobility fleet by almost 300% to enable to provide the service you provide today with battery electric vehicles. This would account to about a $64 million higher capital expense than you would if you were going to be doing it with your existing fleet. And honestly, because of the massive increase in fleet size, number of vehicles you need to buy, amount of electricity it would take to do it, any environmental benefit you would gain from transitioning from a gas vehicle to a zero emission vehicle will almost be lost by the huge increase in vehicles and electricity, things along those lines. So a little disappointing to hear, but this is kind of what we're seeing all over the place, particularly in more rural areas that cover large swaths of a large area. To do this transition fully with 100% fleet would be a pretty massive increase in the costs because of today's battery electric vehicle technology. Like I said, we also took a look at the Riverside facility, and we found a couple issues of trying to prepare that site for battery electric vehicles. And the first one is, there's just not a lot of grid power out there. Again, the amount of electricity we have to bring to that site to charge these vehicles at night and during the day to make this such transition possible. There's just not enough power in the area. It'd be, wildly expensive to bring power to the area to do so. And also, I think as we all learned about a year ago, it's a very high risk location due to flooding. And while that's a problem for almost any transit agency and any vehicle type that you bring here, what's particularly challenging is that we need to actually install chargers there. So there's really kind of two things: either bring them up really high, which can be expensive to get out of the floodplain area, but even then, as we know, it's not guaranteed to protect those assets just because flooding can be so prone. Another real issue here is that you do not own the Riverside property; it is a lease property. And to install all of the necessary charging equipment would be a significant capital investment into a property that we don't own. So you'd have to get the landowner's agreement to do such a thing. And then, if you ever wanted to leave there, there's a lot of technology you couldn't just rip out and replace and bring with you. So there's a lot of investment that needs to be made into a site you don't own. And particularly as you look at the funding opportunities, like the FTA, they generally don't like to invest federal funds in something that is not owned by the facility itself. And the kind of the third real challenge with that site is that there is no vehicle maintenance space. This is something that Mountain Mobility currently contracts out to local shops, which is great for things like gasoline vehicles. But as we start getting to more, more advanced technologies for vehicles, it's not always in the wheelhouse of a local shop that handles these vehicles, start dealing with electric vehicles, all that sort of thing. So it can be very hard to find somebody. I know that y'all operate some propane vehicles today, and I know there's been challenges maintaining those vehicles, just trying to find the right shop with the right staff, with the right availability to keep those vehicles fixed and working and on the road. Propane is something that is used in North Carolina. A lot of agencies use it with great success, but the common thing is they all have their own maintenance staff who has the time and resources availability to really understand those technologies and keep it going. So So that was kind of the highlights that we found with the study, and we do have some recommendations. And the big one is going to be finding a new bus facility that is county owned that can provide the greatest opportunity to embrace these low and no emission technologies. I think we've seen some of the challenges of the Riverside facility and so close to the river there. Pulling it away to someplace that's less likely to flood is a much better spot to start making these investments in the technologies. One, because you actually own the facilities, the FTA would be more amenable to help making those investments. And it's a big one, obviously reducing the risk from floods and things along those lines. And when you own it, you have more control over what you install in there, whether it be a bigger propane fueling system, a CNG fueling system, or a lot of the technology that is required to install all those electric chargers. So again, it doesn't have to be, it can be a shared facility with another county-owned operation, things like that, but certainly having ownership over it is very helpful. And the second one would be self-performing vehicle maintenance. Either through Mountain Mobility or the county, will really empower the agency to embrace cleaner technologies as they continue to evolve. Instead of, it's great to partner with local businesses as much as you can, but to kind of stay on the cutting edge, it's really important to own that process and make sure that you can keep the vehicles in a state of good repair and with the uptime required to do their jobs. So I'd say for today, the best path forward for Mountain Mobility is probably investing in low emission vehicles as the zero-emission industry continues to develop, not only because of the infrastructure, but just because the vehicle technology, particularly with the smaller vehicles, is still rather immature. So to be able to give it time to grow to more zero emission, could still help you reduce your environmental footprint while waiting for that to develop. Any questions?
Any questions? Where our current maintenance facility or storage facility is just a parking lot, right? So we don't have one.
Right, our operations center is at the mill next to the river, and we only store things there.
What's the address?
2000 Riverside Drive.
So where are they fixed or maintained or?
Yeah, so our fleet manager performs some very light maintenance on the vehicles, but most of it gets outsourced to local shops. That's a part of the contract. We're not paying for those maintenance or repairs. That goes as a part of the fee that we pay to our operating contractor.
But I guess a staff recommendation is for the future to have some sort of maintenance facility permanent.
Particularly if we were to transition to zero emissions fleet.
Cool. Yeah.
Which would then bring that function in-house.
Or at least within the contractor's remit specifically, rather than them taking it elsewhere. We would, the way that our contract is currently designed, we provide all capital materials and they provide all operating services and maintenance. So we would make it part of our contract that they perform that in-house, potentially at a facility that we own.
And is there a reason that you'd be interested in changes like that if it weren't going to an EV fleet, or is this just the analysis of if we wanted to do that, this would happen? What I'm trying to understand is, like, are you gonna need a new maintenance facility eventually anyway?
I don't know if we would need necessarily a new maintenance facility at present, given our fleet, which is predominantly for transit vehicles and can be fixed at local shops and local dealers. I don't know that we don't necessarily have to have our own facility. We certainly could incorporate it into our future operating contract. That's not a part of it now. So we would have to invest in the facility and then changing our contract. There's some further complications there, which I won't get into at the moment. It's certainly a possibility. I don't know that I would call it a requirement. That said, we probably will have to leave the mill at some point. One, the river. Two, I think they'd really like us to leave.
What did we do?
Just we have 50 transit vehicles and 50 employees parking there, and that's it. So we take up most of their parking space and very little of their office space. So I just that's the only.
that an imminent thing or just kind of?
Yeah, we have a contract for another 2 years to be there, but again, it's next to the river. Every 2 or 3 years, we have to move the fleet. We move the fleet up to the Buncombe County School facility. Thanks to the Buncombe County Schools for letting us do that when we need. So when the hurricane happened, the only vehicle that we lost that was in use was our service truck, Ford Ranger. There's 2 other vehicles that were wrecked and they stayed there. But anyway, all I was to say is that's not a small endeavor to move our entire fleet out of the river's way. So something to consider.
So your last bullet on low emissions technology, does that include hybrids?
I will let Cole answer that.
It technically does include hybrids, but there are actually no low hybrid vehicles available for the cutaway paratransit vehicles. People, about 10 years ago, somebody tried it. The vehicles were so terrible that nobody has attempted it again. I can tell you, there's one company that's doing conversion kits, but they haven't had a lot of success with them. So for these size vehicles, particularly with the cutaway vehicles, when people are saying low emissions, they're generally saying propane.
My second question. Sorry.
As opposed to CNG, what about CNG?
There's not a lot of CNG vehicles this size up there. I believe Mount Mobility a decade or so ago, maybe 15 years ago, did try with them because Asheville does have a CNG fueling facility, so they use that infrastructure. But I'm not 100. Was never clear 100% what happened with it. I don't think the technology is very successful, and I know that Asheville is looking to phase out that fueling facility. So, but
2 elements. Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead. Cole.
So I will say. Sorry.
No, you finished. I'm in the room. You're not.
No. I will say with a lot of the if I had to guess the future, which don't hold me to it, but I think there's going to be a lot more embrace of CNG technology as we move forward here into the next few years, particularly the FTA. For instance, with the FTA, as part of the IIJA at the federal level, there was about $1 billion a year set aside for low and no emission vehicles through the FTA. And actually, they just announced yesterday this year's financial year 25's allotment of funds, and absolutely $0 went to zero emission vehicles. Over $1 billion went to low emission vehicles. So I'm anticipating that we're going to start seeing manufacturers start investing more in low emission technologies like CNG, maybe some hybrids. We'll see if technology is worked out. So it could potentially come back. The struggle would be embracing any of these technologies is that you really need to have your own locations to invest in the fueling infrastructure. It's good to have your own maintenance staff that you can train up to deal with a lot of these special technologies that come forward. Just because, most local shops, this is not the technology they're dealing with. They're a business trying to make a profit, and spending a lot of time on these special technologies can be difficult for them.
Tell me more about biodiesel. I assume these are diesel vehicles to begin with. Is biodiesel considered a low emission vehicle still, or what's kind of the status for that in the marketplace?
Oh, most of your fleet is gasoline. But interestingly enough, biodiesel, according to the FTA, I have to double check, is actually not considered a low emission technology.
It's a lot to produce the biological component.
You nailed it.
I'll just add 2 elements to that regarding CNG. There was a question. We did have, I want to say, 6 CNG equipped vehicles. We had a problem fueling them. The facility down in McDowell regularly ran out of supply during the day when we needed to refuel. So that caused a significant bottleneck for us. And there was not, in the later service years of those vehicles, there was not a second place to fuel. So those vehicles were sat. The other part is supply for most of these alternative vehicles. As Cole has alluded, the manufacturers aren't yet making them at a scale that has been made available to us in an appropriate manner. The vehicles that we operate only have 100,000 mile service life. The city's buses have a 500,000 mile service life. So we're replacing them much more quickly. But as a result, for us to to go out and find an outside vendor beyond the typical manufacturers is a little more onerous. And we, again, without the facility of our own maintenance and things like that. So we run into those issues.
So the question I have is, I know that Proterra went out of business and they had a South Carolina location. Thomasville buses, I believe, maybe in this space a little bit. Are there enough companies, manufacturers out there right now to even have enough options to look at?
When we're talking about big buses like the Proterras, that is certainly a problem. You know, with Proterra out of business, they're actually got purchased by a company called Phoenix, who is trying to spin them back up. On the heavy duty bus side, there was certainly a concern of manufacturability. Now, y'all don't have big buses, you have the smaller buses. Ford Transit buses, which are vans, which are pretty standard, no problem getting those. And even the cutaway vehicles, all those vehicles are Ford F-250s, Ford F-350s, or Chevys, where they take the body off, they plop the cutaway frame body on the frame, and you keep going. So not as much of a concern there. You know, there's always going to be F-250s, F-350s, and Chevys and the like, and there's plenty of upfitters that are out there doing it. For electric ones, those are going really quickly, and there are people leaving the market. The problem is, as soon as you take that F-150 frame and you pull the engine and the drivetrain out and pop an electric one in there, Ford says we're done. We're not going to support this. You've taken our. It's not. You're basically taking our frame. It's not a thing anymore. And we've seen more and more of those outfitters kind of go out of business and having a lot of transit agencies come, not knowing where to turn to fix this vehicle because nobody supports it anymore. But things like CNG and propane specifically, conversion kits, these are very popular. You see them a lot. Most of the upfitters know what they're doing to work with it. So I would say it's a pretty healthy technology moving forward.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Cole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Cole. Sustainable procurement toolkit. Let's see.
Yeah, so today, myself, Cassie, and Ron, and I've walked y'all through a sustainable procurement toolkit that we put together. So just some context, so this was kind of born out of the resolution to support sustainable procurement that the board adopted May of last year. And the goal of that was to promote public health, environmental stewardship, and responsible resource management through minimizing the impacts of procurement. There was a strong emphasis on plastic reductions and use of compostable alternatives as well as events. So we try to reflect that.
Those that don't know, there may be one or two people in here that don't know me. I'm Ron Ventron, the procurement manager for Buncombe County. So we still have to follow procurement laws and policies. In the toolkit talks about applying sustainable procurement methods that are transparent and consistent with state procurement rules and the county procurement manual. You'll see in the toolkit, it discusses specifications and scope of work for sustainable purchases, such as creating criteria that are relevant, measurable, and proportional to budgets, the scope and complexity of projects or the goods that they're being purchased. Establishing criteria that present the best combination of quality, price, and sustainable performance. And when appropriate, structures bid specifications that reflect the life cycle cost that include the acquisition, the operational, maintenance cost, and disposable costs. And the toolkit also includes some good sample language to integrate best practices for solicitations and contracts.
So this is just an example of like one of the resources that's available in the toolkit. So we outline some product specifications for some maybe commonly purchased items. So if like folks might not know what a good target is for recycled content for office paper, so we try to establish that for them. Similarly, we identify some third-party certifications that are reputable and that consider the entire life cycle of the product and are kind of developed in this like broader stakeholder engagement process. We also kind of give them some hints on how to avoid any kind of greenwashing or these like undefined buzzword kind of fake certifications. So those top 6 are legit, and the one at the bottom is kind of meaningless. So we try to help them out there.
Specifically for catering and food service, we outline a few recommendations to implement when planning events or meetings that involve food or drink, requesting RSVPs to plan portion sizes accordingly. Making a plan in advance to distribute leftovers can be helpful. Bulk drink containers, reusable or compostable serveware. More on that in the next slide. And ensuring that there are appropriate bins with signage at the event, of opting for buffet style to reduce waste, and then incorporating local, organic, fair trade, seasonal, plant-based, etc. Into the event can also be helpful. So specifically when purchasing compostables and expanding upon Jackie's previous slide on greenwashing, we want to ensure that the material that people who are making these purchases are actually compostable. And so we do recommend that the compostable items are either BPI or ASTM 6400 certified. These are the 2 common certifications that our commercial composter can actually break down in their composting process, and that we will be able to break down in our composting process once our pilot program opens. And so we do give some recommendations by company, and we break it down on quantity, price per unit, just as a cost comparison to be considerate of each department's budgets.
Again, since there was kind of an emphasis on events in the resolution, we put together a list of local caterers and highlighted some of their sustainability features, including like partnership with food donation partners, whether or not they offer compostable serveware, things like that, sourcing ingredients locally. We also gave some tips on like swag and giveaways, encouraging folks to just question whether they need to have this at all, prioritizing experiences over physical items, maybe raffling fewer higher quality items instead of giving everyone a silly little bracelet or something. And then, obviously allowing folks to choose what they want off the table instead of pre-assembled bags. And one thing we did in the toolkit is we came up with a list of kind of local stuff that folks could source. Maybe like nice little tea bags from Ashland Tea Company is on there, or like digital prints from a local artist that you could print and give away at your event. So we did kind of distribute this to designated representatives from each department, and we hosted a similar longer presentation with them and got some feedback. So like we had 15 different departments show up, which was nice, and they were very engaged, and they did give us some feedback that we're working on incorporating. And then once the kind of new version of the website is up, we'll find the best place to publish the toolkit online. Next time the sustainable or the procurement manual or P-card trainings are updated, we'll be sure to reference this toolkit and those. One thing that came up with when we did presented this to departments is that when we showed them like a list of potential swag items, they were like really excited about it. And they wanted a list for everything, and maybe something that was more crowdsourced. So like, where are you buying your t-shirts? Like, what type of t-shirt from the vendor? What kind of ink from that vendor? So some people were getting in the weeds, which is good. And then we also maybe want to support some additional collaborations or events. One thing that came up with departments was this idea about reverse vendor fair in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and kind of connecting our folks that make purchases at the county with more local businesses. And then we'll work on developing some strategies to measure impact of the toolkit. And then this will be kind of a living document, and we'll review and update as there's changes.
You got any questions?
Yeah, that's good.
One question that came to mind, slightly unrelated, is does anybody know if the county is seeking grant funding? I believe this is through an NCDEQ program for an industrial composter. We've talked about that a few times in this committee about the possibility of that, and I know Grant opened up for that, so you might know.
Yes, so I can speak to that. We have just finished construction on our compost processing facility at pilot at the landfill. We are planning on conducting training and making our first batch of compost in mid-December. And that is through an NCTEQ food waste reduction grant. I believe that was 2023 and 2024. We kind of combined grants to fund the construction of that. And so the idea for that is we will be processing compost or food waste that we collect through the residential food scraps drop-off program as a pilot program now. And with maybe future plans to expand that program as we figure things out. However, the lean recovery, resource recovery grant that you are referencing, we are also planning on applying for that. The deadline is January 30th. We already have a draft that is in the motion. We are focusing on construction and demolition of recycling for that specific grant.
Okay.
I'm sure that we will come to this committee with many updates, hopefully all of them positive.
Cool. Okay.
Yes.
The composter is the thing you're referencing is under construction now. Is some sort of passive composting.
Yes, it's aerated static pile.
Yeah.
So we
It's
do.
not like the Wilmington was going to be
No,
thing. Okay.
that is Windboro composting. Wilmington is blessed and graced with lots of flat space and flat. And so this is kind of a more compact way to do the same process.
Okay.
I'm gonna go see it someday.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Site visit would be lovely.
Yes,
We could schedule that on our own, or it could be like a team activity if others are interested.
absolutely. We plan on having a ribbon cutting ceremony. And definitely also we plan on having a ribbon cutting ceremony. I'm not sure, we're still in the process of getting that scheduled. But we will also, incorporate that into landfill tours, and specifically if, someone is just interested in a compost tour, that we can certainly provide that. We do have an online tour booking portal now on our website. I did work hard to do that.
What we did.
I think the landfill tours are underrated, and I'm constantly
Fascinating place.
a completely objective person commenting on this. Also the person who's giving tours.
Let's see.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
It is.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Jackie. Thank you. Moving ahead here, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
CPACE. Remember when we talked about this like 5 years ago?
Kind of feels like it sometimes, doesn't it? Great. There we go. There we go. Yes, we did talk about CPACE already, so hopefully folks in the room are relatively familiar with it, what it is. So I'm not gonna spend a ton of time talking about what it is, we're gonna talk about the next steps. We want to do. Right? Quickly, commercial property assessed, capital expenditure, some would say commercial property assessed entity. It's essentially just another tool in the toolbox as a financing mechanism for energy projects. The General Assembly enacted it in July of 24. It's administered by the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, an acronym that I really struggle with. There are CPACE programs all over the country. It is a market-based lending mechanism. So these are our traditional financing institutions. And you know, the state administrator does not qualify lenders. They are just market lenders. Biggest difference between CPACE and traditional lending, honestly, is number one, it's attached to the property, so it doesn't go anywhere. If the property changes hands 30 times, the loan is still there. And loan terms tend to be a lot longer, right? So you can amortize this over potentially 20 to 30 years, which tends to lower number of payments. Stakeholder responsibilities. So for local governments, getting us into CPACE is relatively simple. We first have to adopt a resolution of intent, conduct a public hearing, and then the board has to adopt a resolution to participate in CPACE. The register of deeds recorded the lien. That's something that happens regardless. Like if someone has a lien on property, the register of deeds says that no matter what, whether it's a homeowner or whatever. So that's not any real work. So there's really no exposure to us financially or legally. So there's not a lot of barriers to us participating in this. It's just a process that we are going to have to go through if we choose to do so. EP&C, however, they are the state administrators, so they do most of the lifting for us. They are reviewing applicants and determining eligibility, collecting fees, submitting documents to us. They don't qualify vendors. Vendors are, again, just part of the market. They come in and participate. And of course, capital providers, the ones that are actually doing the loan, do all the closing, and disperse the funds. And the important part, compared to a lot of CPACE programs that happen across the country, is that the private lenders are the ones that do the billing and collecting. Oftentimes that is done through the tax bill, which does add an administrative burden to the local government typically, but in this case, we do not do that. So again, it's one less barrier. It's actually something during the crafting of this legislation that we found in the table on pretty hard is like, don't make this hard for us. And so, you know, state legislators actually came through some pretty good, with a pretty good program. So that's it. Eligibility, again, privately owned, commercial, industrial, or agricultural, can be multifamily, needs to be a clean energy project, water conservation, energy efficiency, that sort of things. Can be resilience projects. Covered hard and soft costs, and again, can be pretty long-term in terms of the loan. That's one of the benefits to it, but cannot exceed 35% of the value of the loan. So that's just one of the eligibility requirements. As a bit of level setting here, just understand that like while we may make this available to folks, it's not like a really common thing, right? So for example, in 2024, Virginia, which has had CPACE out there for a while, had one CPACE project. California had 33, we're not California, right? The average CPACE loan was $11 million in 2024, so not insignificant. But I don't want to give the impression that if we adopt this, that we're going to have 30 CPACE projects first year. We might have one, might have two or three. It's another tool in the toolbox, right? So it's not going to be a magic bullet for clean energy projects, but it is, again, just one more thing that we could do as a local government to enable more tools for people use, right? Recently, the first CPACE project in North Carolina, in Gastonia, was a multifamily development. They got $6.5 million in CPACE financing. They did a lot of these energy efficiency upgrades to this facility when they were converting it. what this particular project did actually was to use CPACE as a refinancing tool. So they had paid for all of these things. They borrowed CPACE money because they could get it at a better rate and for a longer term. So use that money to pay off other debt, which is something that is not uncommon, right? CPACE can be used to do the work. It can also be used as a refinancing tool for folks that have already done.
So all I need to do is just like show verification that they've already done this.
And that is on the state administrator to handle
That's
that.
cool.
Ensure that it, it was an eligible activity.
Yeah.
You installed high efficiency units in these apartments, et cetera. They can do all that verification and then say, yes, this is a project. And again, it's paid for already, and in this case, they just simply use it as a refinancing mechanism. Lower long-term costs.
But that would not be a completed project. These things underway, or would they say if this building's been finished for 2 years, they could go back?
I don't know how far they're gonna go back. Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer out of my head. I doubt you could go back 5 years and say, well, we did this 5 years ago, can we refinance? I highly doubt that. But I don't wanna make a definitive statement on that. The state administrator would probably be the person to ask. That said, we plan on having some discussions we've had some discussions with the state administrator, but we'd like to host potentially like a workshop for local folks to learn more about this program at the end of this next steps part, but since you asked. But our next steps, other than introducing this today, bring both resolutions to a briefing on January 6th, vote on the resolution of intent, next one, announce the public hearing, and then come back and vote on the actual resolution to join CPACE as a county on February 3rd. And then again, hopefully like maybe early spring, we could potentially host UPNC and get the word out, have some local folks. And Jason, who was here earlier, his folks, they've already been talking about this for a while now, so they're really interested in it. And we presented this timeline to them as well, just so that they're aware of it. Maybe even work with those folks to say, who have you been talking to? Let's all get put together, have a state administrator comment, maybe answer questions like yours that I don't have the answer to. But that's sort of the next steps for us. Again, because we talked about CPACE, I didn't want to spend too much time discussing what it is. I wanted to tell you what the next steps are to make this happen. So certainly happy to talk about it more and discuss it more, but the ask of this group today is to make a vote to move the resolution of intent and the resolution to the full board of commissioners for consideration.
Good.
No move.
You have the,
Down.
do you have the copies of both of those that you showed us? And then
Resolution.
Yeah.
They
maybe
were sent to you in an email.
Maybe you see those.
I can pull them up if you'd like to see them.
I just, it worked.
Before you talk that, well, remind me what the rate is on these loans?
It's market rate.
It's just market rate.
It's market rate, yeah. It's like anything else. Lenders will have the option to sort of compete with each other for these lenders, for these projects. But yeah, we have that question a lot too, like, is this cheaper? What makes it potentially cheaper is the term and not the rate. So it's a market rate one.
Like your 50-year mortgage.
Oh,
That's what there. Save people so much money.
Jeremiah, is there can you go back to that schedule real fast?
Mhm.
What, I'm curious why we need 2 regular commission meetings. Is it, does our public hearing?
So there's a resolution of intent that has to be done first. And there is a public hearing, and then there is the actual resolution. That's just the way the state set it up. So there's multiple meetings.
Yeah, that sets the public hearing, has to be voted on prior, okay, yeah, I see.
Sorry, I took that down too.
So is there a motion to recommend approval of the resolution of intent and CPACE resolution to the Oklahoma County Board of Supervisors?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Great.
Before we move off this topic, I'll add that, I chair our Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee at the city, and we've been talking about this as well. At the city, assuming we all pass this, it applies within all of our municipalities, but, we also sometimes get more press than y'all, and so our intent is to hear this winter and then duplicate a process, whether it's a formal resolution or something, but to also bring it to our council chambers so that one, we're educating our electeds and having this conversation and beyond. But I also just really like the idea, since we're your population hub, of us doing it in lockstep together so that any press that we would have that our state departments would do would be Asheville and Pumpkin County, so it shows we're in this together. And then also discussing like a press conference type of thing. Again, I don't think we're gonna see hundreds of people knocking on our door, but I think public education is still really valuable. And we might be different because of the rebuild context for disaster than other areas. So we might have a lot of creative folks who have values around sustainability. So, I mean, none of us are funding our departments to hire an outreach coordinator and pump this out, right? So I would like to leverage the decision-making process to have as much public education as possible. So we're doing that lockstep.
I think post recovery may make that question about complete projects relevant. There may be a lot of people who just finished refurbishing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Meant to mention that, it's slip casting. And when the county does this, everybody within our umbrella is automatically sort of haunted. But
And I
yeah,
think Kira from our sustainability office is here. Would you like to add anything from what you guys were talking about that wise?
No, that's it, that's exactly right, we're just looking to go one meeting behind you, that.
I'm gonna turn the lights back on. One of the hot topics in this building, landslides.
Ooh.
All right.
Good morning, happy Friday, everybody.
Morning.
For those of y'all that don't know me, my name is Burnett Walls, and I am part of the county's strategy and innovation team. And after the storm, I was co-leading our infrastructure recovery team. And one of the items that fell under our purview were the landslides that occurred in the county. For those of you that don't know, just in general background, there were roughly 2,000 slides that occurred in the state. Ballpark, half of those took place in Buncombe County, so roughly about 1,000 slides that occurred in the county. And of those slides, there were several that claimed lives, many damaged homes and infrastructure, roads. And you can see there's a visualization up there from the U.S. Geological Survey representing some of the points of interest as it relates to landslides. So you can see where Asheville is highlighted there in yellow, and majority of the slides that took place are really to the east of town. As we were working through this process of really coming up with a strategy of how we're going to deal with these slides, time and time again with our conversations with our partners, North Carolina Emergency Management and FEMA, it became abundantly clear that this was unprecedented. Like, they had no playbook for how to deal with the magnitude of this, and we were really in uncharted territory
as we were working to define the strategy for how we're gonna remediate the slides in the county. And, you know, I can say this wholeheartedly that, FEMA really have been an exceptional partner throughout this process. They stood up a task force that we partnered with hand in hand, and they have been instrumental in getting us to the point to where we are today. So big thanks to our FEMA partners to help us create the strategy and define the roadmap for dealing with the slide. But long and short of it is, we have a lot of slides took place here in the county.
What's the significance of the different colors of the dot?
You can't really see the legend of the left-hand corner, but there's a demarc where there was a landslide impacting a structure, whether or not it was impacting some kind of water feature, that's blue. So there's different items on that.
So the red one is structure
You
impact.
got it, yeah, right,
Yeah.
The good news is, so when you look at the landscape of these 1,000 slides, the good news is a majority of them did not necessarily impact someone's home or any kind of infrastructure. So there's a lot of slides that are on hillsides you see that really had no bearing or impact to implications to people's dwellings and so forth.
And so the red impact to infrastructure could be a culvert, a bridge.
Yeah, exactly,
It could be,
right,
it's
yeah.
not necessarily somebody's home.
You got it. Yeah,
That's it.
And this, I'm like pulling up the presentation on my computer. Is this, where can I look at that map? Is that publicly available?
Yeah, that's published at the USGS website. That's where I got that image.
So part of that trail, the red to the south, is that the parkway in the slides along it?
No, so you mean the trail of red dots?
Yes, so I'm surprised this is more to the south, you're to the north.
Orient your where's fair for you.
Yeah, so if you look in pretty much in the center of that image, highlighted in yellow,
Is it,
is the city of Asheville, that's right.
yeah, so I'm looking southeast is where most of the red is.
Yeah.
I thought it was more
Correct.
northeast, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's when you look at that, that's like Swananoa, Fairview area.
Okay. I'm not probably aware of it, okay.
I just, this map.
That's where I thought it was, so.
And a lot of that is consistent with the intense rain patterns, right? So like that's where we just saw
Sure.
unstable
Absolutely,
soils and like the highest rain intensity areas.
Yeah, and for all intents and purposes, when we look at where the 15 deaths occurred, they occurred at Garen Creek site in Fairview and the Groma site in Swananoa.
How many deaths were in this one?
2. Any questions so far? All right, painting the picture, right? Landscape, a lot of slides.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. Thank you. Sure. So as we were trying to wrap our arms around, like just fully trying to understand the magnitude of what took place, we knew there were a lot of landslides. We were aware of some of the larger ones, but what we didn't really have clear line of sight to is sort of the smaller to mid-sized slides, right? And who was impacted? Like how many homes were impacted? What is the extent of this? So thankfully, we were able to partner with North Carolina Geological Survey to grab a mapping layer that they created of the slides. And we subsequently overlaid that onto the county's property parcel layer. So using GIS technology, we were able to identify multiple properties that were impacted by slides. And what you can see on that image is actually of the Grovemont slide in Swananoa. And you can see the slides themselves, and then you can see the delineation of actual property parcels. So when we were working on developing the strategy, really there were kind of like 3 main categories for buckets that we had identified, right? We had slides that occurred on county property. So there were 2 slides that took place in county property, and that was
that path is pretty straightforward, right? That's a typical FEMA public assistance project, right? So county is the applicant, we apply, there's a methodology for how we get reimbursed for the work that takes place. So there were two slides that fit nicely into that category. Now the second category are the slides that impacted single properties. So you're a homeowner, you have a slide in your backyard that impacted your house, maybe a deck or whatever it may be. So if you were in that situation, the hazard mitigation grant program, the state's hazard mitigation grant program was really the path that we steered folks down to, right? Then we have this third category, which is these larger slides that impacted 2 or more properties. And that was for our purposes, that was sort of like the really unknown, right? Because we knew that there were a lot of slides in that category, and we knew that financially, like the county did not have the resources to single-handedly stabilize these slides, right? So that was really where we worked closely with the FEMA and North Carolina Emergency Management to develop the current model that we're pursuing that I'll get to in a few slides. But in the process of kind of working through this mapping and identification, we were able to identify 55 slides that impacted 2 or more residential properties. And of those 55, 25 have met the FEMA criteria for funding of an architectural engineering study. And for those of you folks that don't know what that is, basically the process that took place is that we identified those 55 slides. We partnered with FEMA to go out and do this preliminary assessment of the slides, where take measurements, they do some kind of very superficial kind of analytics, and basically make a determination of whether or not the slide presents future imminent danger to residents and subsequent structure. So meets that criteria, then FEMA says, okay, we're gonna fund kind of like the next step, which is this more in-depth study that ultimately the output of that A&E study is recommendations for stabilization, and they take and an estimated cost to conduct that stabilization work. Any questions? A lot came out of my mouth.
And I want to point out, we are, as a county, running this pilot program. The only place in the state, maybe the nation, that's doing this, and we're running this at the county level. And this is simply just to see what we can do, right, as a next step.
That's where my questions go of like, is there a burden of responsibility on the government on these private properties?
And the individuals.
I guess I just have like a vigil, I don't really have many in the city limits, so I just haven't been exposed to this, and it's just interesting because we have so many, and
right.
As Buncombe County explorers, I bet Joe will be looking over your shoulder and Avery, because they also have them, so I think it's really important, and I'm excited that y'all are digging into it. I guess, is there a this is gonna be really crass, but like, why do we care? Or like, if this is on private property, why is this a government problem besides these are our citizens and we love them and we care about them and this was a big problem and probably expensive, but like, are there bigger implications for public service why we're stepping in besides these people need help?
I think one of the answers is that post-disaster, there's always been some sort of program to help people on private property with what happened to them, except landslide hasn't. We're trying to shoehorn a landslide solution into a typical event that happens.
FEMA hazard mitigation was created for floods, right, and being too close to a river.
Yeah.
This is somewhat of a square peg round hole. Insurance doesn't. And as we've looked around the country, when we recently had the emergency management staff member from Vermont who came and met with us when we were in Banner Elk with the American Flood Coalition, I asked him about this. I know our staff's been talking to us in California. This is actually somewhat unique to Western North Carolina, the way these landslides have dropped and created.
So it wasn't just the like, we were hit the worst. the level of impact from landslides is very uncommon to other
And
disasters.
our landscape also somehow.
Even like the fires and stuff that we saw in Colorado didn't.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask,
This
California. Where they had, well,
I was not analogous to California.
yeah,
California typically has, and there's very smart science words that I'm supposed to use here, but basically the way that we're set up and the way the homes are situated, they're in these debris flow pathways. Typically in California, you'll have a mountain drop and then it has, you know, a debris field where it lands, and there's typically not a lot of development in those areas. Because our mountains are so old and they're sloped just enough that we can build homes on them, it creates, this is all my non-scientific understanding, we're in a position where we have debris flow where we typically have development.
And did those landslides occur in a presidentially declared natural disaster? That's what I think. These are all landslides that occurred in a presidentially declared federal natural disaster.
So and I'm just summarizing to make sure that I keep up with you guys on this, like the fundamental difference is we feel like we're slow gators of our residents, dealing with what happened to them on their properties. And there's a gap in the federal programming, and we have so many people, 25, that are like in property owners who are in a hole right now. We're like, we don't know where to direct them. We're not sure how to help them. And so we're starting to do more study, but we don't even know what our role is. It might fundamentally be an advocacy role, a policy. But we just, at a fundamental level, need to learn more, and that's where the A&E studies are going.
I'd add,
And maybe I'm getting ahead of the
Right.
presentation.
I think you're in the ballpark for sure. So the reason we're focused on these is because they are life safety issues, and so as part of emergency response, like it falls to that quite a bit.
Meaning like they could slide further.
But have an impact to, you know, residents, infrastructure, things like that. They're not necessarily landslides that have no, like in the middle of a field that have no impact. So that's separate.
And just for preparing for a potentially bad fire season, we need to be prepared for what potential debris flow could result in for our residents.
Fires trigger flows too.
No,
Just like stabilization.
As we worry about floods for our residents, we worry
Yeah.
about wildfires for our residents, this is another danger that we need to be thinking about how it impacts our communities.
It's like mountain stabilization.
And we started the conversation, like we didn't jump in and say, hey, county really wants to do this. We started at the federal government level, but pushed for a long time, and then they pushed to the state. We pushed there for a long time. And then we ended up in a situation where it was like, only government that's gonna step into this is the county government. But then Burnett's gonna talk to us about how we are mitigating our risk, in particular financially, as we do that.
yeah, let me ask another, since we got into this discussion, I'll ask one of my many questions. And that is, there were also, I mean, I think it was 1 month or two ago, you made all the reindeer Fairview, where a slope had previously been loosened, if you will. Not sure that's the right technical term, but loosened by Helene, but then with this rain, it came down. It might not have otherwise. Did you find any way to identify places where Helene made the terrain more dangerous, but didn't actually cause a slide? In other words, sort of a way for us to anticipate what was going.
So the two ways that the two kind of like tools that we leverage to identify those 55 slides. So firstly, that the mapping that took place in terms of the data we got from NCGS combined with our parcel layer was like the primary way. And then if we had residents who reached out to us, say, hey, you know, there's a landslide here, are you aware of it? That also was another avenue for kind of expanding the breadth of that initial analysis around the mapping.
So there could be a lot more homes that had, they even had a landslide above them, but it stopped before they got to the home. You can pick up and continue next time.
That's a distinct possibility, yeah. That is true. If it wasn't identified by NCGS and no one reached out to us, like, we don't know what we don't know.
That, yeah, it's not a criticism.
Sure.
And certainly, we can only afford so much. But I think we need to think about that.
The other thing though to keep in mind is that you can't tell a landslide by looking at it in terms of how bad it is or whether it's going to go further. So it's all about the geology underneath. And so some things may look terrible, may look precarious, and likely aren't going anywhere. And other things look completely benign, and that's where your slide could happen. So that's one of the difficulties. But then the second thing is a lot of these slides were so significant that they're down to the bedrock and likely aren't going further unless they're only partially down the mountain, right? But a lot of things came down, and the thought is it's unfortunate the destruction that came with it, but that's nature. That's what's going to happen. So some things we can't remediate. Some things there's some mechanisms for, but it's very hard to say, yeah, that's a risk of living in the mountains, but it is a risk of living in the mountains and the geology that we have. However, for Ned's point, we have some great mapping tools that do a fairly good job of predicting where slides may be in the future. And so there's a whole lot of stuff. The French Broad River Partnership had their membership, their annual meeting on Monday. And they had Dr. Prince there and the YouTube guy who explains all of this with drawings. And check him out. He does he's like the Neil deGrasse Tyson of landslides, you know, he just simplifies it, right? But he was talking about these very things, like how do we get kind of assess where they are likely to be, and then he would show where they were and show the LiDAR, and you'd be like, oh. You know,
Can you send a link to that?
I can try.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Sure, yeah.
This, like I watched some of those videos and I think I understand that like a landslide and a debris flow are different. Debris flow is kind of like a river of debris, and a landslide is like stuff schlepping off the mountain. And we were at a town hall, we had some neighbors really, really concerned about like development regulation and debris flows. I don't even know what, like, I don't get it. So like, what is it like, we don't,
Sure, I think I know where you're going. Can I rephrase your question?
yeah,
Yeah.
I need to like, I get the distinction of when something happens, but I don't understand the implications for us now as like development regulators.
Right, so there's a lot of discussion when we were in Banner Elk around this as well. The first thing I'll say is kudos to Buncombe County for having a steep slopes ordinance and the
Yeah.
wise commissioners that put this in place. And I've asked Nate how many lives that saved, and we don't know, it's countless. There are a lot of homes that stayed on the side of the mountains because of the steep slopes ordinance. The second question that came out of the town hall is how reliable are our landslide and debris flow, likely landslide and debris flow maps? And then the second question is there a potential for us to have disclosure for homeowners, business owners who are in landslide, likely landslide routes or debris flow routes? Can we do that on the county level? Does the state need to do that? Because we know we have flood disclosure for home buyers and renters, but nothing exists for folks who are in debris flow pathways or potential landslide areas.
That was my question. Can you briefly explain this steep slopes ordinance?
Yeah, it's a set of, if the site where you want to build meets certain criteria about the steepness of the slope, you have to mitigate that with more secure development and structural, like building and structural protections.
Some of it is that the cities at least also has some like elevation caps where you can't really build over certain, and it's not just the house, but like the infrastructure to get there. So the fundamental concept is like, if this is too steep, it's gonna be so cost prohibitive that you're not gonna be able to build there, or you're gonna build with safety so that you're not risking falling down or whatever. Like, it's a common tool in mountainous areas, but I think Asheville and Buncombe may be some of the region.
And it's interacts closely with our bridge law as well. So you can't build, if the ridge is above a certain height above the valley floor, near you can't build on that ridge line. So it all works together.
Okay.
Protect infrastructure.
Good, move on. There's more to come, but we're not done. Okay, so real quick, just to kind of, this slide is meant to kind of frame up the process that we've been working through as we talk about trying to mitigate the risk associated with the slide. So when we talk about like the life cycle, there's really two very distinct phases to it. We have first phase, which is conducting the A&E study, and as I indicated, we're working to hire a vendor that they go in, they do soil samples, they do LiDAR associated with it. It's much more in-depth study that took place from the FEMA landslide task force. So phase one is that A&E study. Then phase two is the actual stabilization of the slope. And as we've been working through this first phase, which is where we're currently right now in phase one, there's multiple steps, right, in terms of how we've been working through with FEMA. So I tried to outline some of this up here, and I'll just quickly talk through it. So, we talked about this partnership with the FEMA landslide task force. We conducted those initial assessments. Ultimately, when FEMA kind of said, yes, you can move forward, we would submit that as a project. The money then gets appropriated from FEMA, which then goes to North Carolina Emergency Management. We're currently working on, we've identified a vendor to conduct the A&E study for Grovermont. And as I'll get to in a minute, kind of when we talk about this sort of like pilot program, really what we're piloting here is the funding mechanism, the agreement that we've reached with North Carolina Emergency Management.
Through HMGP or through PA?
No. So this is kind of like, it's sort of like a hybrid PA model.
That's right.
Yeah. But anyway, so this is.
PA is the public assistance pot of FEMA, and usually it's just for government assets.
Right.
But I think, so you're pushing innovation to say this might be private property, but it poses a public risk, and so therefore the government should steward it and get government money, but it's pretty out of the box.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll get to the detail, but I just wanted to share, like, this is a process, right? And once we kind of get through that first phase, this process repeats itself again, right? So we take the findings from that A&E study, that ultimately becomes a project that gets submitted to FEMA for stabilization, and then this whole process then kind of like, So. All right. So as I indicated, the output of this A&E study is the recommended stabilization methodology and the associated costs. And like I said, this is going to be a phase two of the project. But really what I wanted to illustrate is that with this slide is that and being out with the FEMA engineers doing the assessments, they made it abundantly clear to me that like no slide is exactly the same. Like there's no cookie cutter approach to how you stabilize these things. There's different methodologies for stabilization. You can see these images outline some of those, like soil anchors, retaining walls, gabions, riprap, etc. So there's, and long story short, there's a bunch of different ways to address these slides that we're going to find out as we start moving into the stabilization phase for this. So no two slides are the same. And then in terms of where we are today, right? So I've alluded to this. We identified the Grovermont slide out in Swananoa as our test case. We are super close to having a finalized contract with the vendor that will be performing the A&E study. The agreement that we arrived at with North Carolina Emergency Management is that
they will advance us 75% upon execution of a contract. So we're gonna get advanced the funding for the A&E study. Why this is unique is that typically for a PA project, it's all done on a reimbursement basis. So we knew, and Tim has been adamant and stressing this from the get-go, the county cannot finance, we do not have the cash flow means to finance these projects. So that's when we were pushing on FEMA and North Carolina Emergency Management, we made that abundantly clear to them. Hey, given the scope of these slides, we are not financially in a position to where we can advance the funding for this work. So, long story short, the deal that we arrived at was that they're going to fund 75% of we're going to provide 75% of the cost up front. And ultimately, the way in which we've structured the contract with the vendor doing the A&E study, there's little to no cash flow implications to the county in terms of how we're going to be paying the vendor. So this is what we talk about being rad. This is the rad part of the whole deal.
That's like what the FEMA Act is trying to deal with right now and stuff in committee. That would do. So it seems like they have, because there isn't a set rule book, it's not like we have to do the legislative reform at the federal level. They want to figure out a path to do this. You guys are their guinea pig that they're piloting, which could be phenomenal for advocacy too. Of like, look, we figured this out on the landslide, and they bring this together. This is really
good.
This is really cool. All right. What ballpark of cost estimates are you thinking for the A&E work as well as the stabilization?
So the
Hundreds
A&E,
of thousands, tens of millions?
yeah, millions. So as an example, the way that A&E estimates are developed by FEMA is that, so in those preliminary assessments they conduct, they go out and they measure the kind of like the size of the slide, and it's really a very simple math formula that says, okay, the volume of the slide is X times a rate to stabilize it, and then they take a percentage of that high level estimate to come up with the A&E estimated cost. So it's a broad brush stroke, total swag. So right now, for the 25 slides, the estimated A&E costs are approaching $10 million.
Just for the
Just for the A&E, right? So then, yeah.
I mean, the stabilization can be hundreds of millions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
Times computers.
Yeah. Yeah, so the cost is going to be significant. There's no question about that. So.
Hi, everyone. Hey, sorry, it's going.
So the growth line slide is our first test case. Commissioners, as I indicated to you all on Tuesday, that we're hoping to have a contract for you all to basically approve on December 2nd. And then we'll move forward with submitting that to North Carolina Emergency Management, and hopefully the funding will come shortly after. So that's the next steps as it relates to Groveline. We got 24 other slides that we need to deal with. So we are going to be launching an RFQ, so a request for qualifications, for the Garen Creek slide by the end of this month. So Garen Creek is next in line, and our hope is that we'll have a vendor selected by mid-January and begin the contract negotiation process for Garen Creek. And our strategy for the RFQs is that just from a capacity perspective on staff here in the county, we don't want to issue 24 RFQs. We're going to consolidate those into geographical groups and hope to have maybe 4 or 5 more that will be launched sequentially. So we'll wrap up the Garen Creek RFQ. That'll then kick off another, and so forth. So,
can you briefly summarize? Because I'm thinking of the Garen Creek slides that I saw a year ago. It's like 12x the size of the road. So what, can you briefly summarize what you mean by an RFQ?
So basically what we're gonna do, so request for qualifications is, it's kind of like an RFP, but we're validating the qualifications of a firm to actually conduct the work. So basically, we're, just like we did with Grovemont, we put an RFQ out for Grovemont. We received 4 responses, and an internal team selected what we felt was the most viable vendor to perform the work. We then work with the vendor to arrive at a scope of work, and they subsequently provided a cost estimate for that scope of work. We know that we've got a certain amount funded by FEMA, so that's sort of our ceiling in terms of where we are with each of these individual A&Es. So for Grovemont, same process, right? We're gonna we provide basic details, high level understanding of, here's the slide we're talking about, this is the size of it. What are your qualifications to actually perform an A&E study for this given slide?
Just a couple quick notes, just the nature of the work, it's an RFQ, and these are engineers. So engineering stamp is necessary, so it kind of shrinks the pool of folks willing to even dabble in the space. And then the other piece I'd note, like, we're on a great path, hope to do more work. At the end of this study, we may find out that there are no solutions to remediate some of these slides.
Yep.
Because there just aren't. Or we may find that there are solutions that are extremely costly and that FEMA is unwilling to reimburse us based on the benefit cost assessment CA that they do. So long path, but we're on a good one. We just have to follow through. And you have reason to believe there's going to be lots of civil firms that submit applications.
And if we use the Grovemont slide as a model, we received 4 responses. Okay, so, and then there was 2, just so you know, there was 2 firms in the southeast that replied, and then there was 2 that have like a national scale.
What are the liability exposures for these companies that do this stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's a huge consideration, right? Is that I mean, there's not in terms of liability from the assessment, there's not, like, the liability is significantly less when you talk about stabilization. So the stabilization is where
Is there a way we can change the word, protection from liability some way? I mean, we don't want people to be reckless as companies, so we don't want it completely, but I don't know that you get anybody. If you're gonna be talking about trying to, well, okay, you come back and 10 years later, there's another slide and wiped out my house, my family's dead.
Especially when their name and field on a document.
Yeah.
That ensures the work.
Indemnify this one.
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, that's a significant consideration, obviously, when we start moving into stabilization work. We're not there yet, but that's definitely something that has to be front and center as we approach that. Definitely.
I have to commend you. This is an amazingly challenging thing to take on, and the fact that you even have a plan, take it is admirable. I also want to reinforce the point you made earlier on about awareness where you're building or where you're buying. And because actually, when we moved here a few years ago, we were very interested in areas around Black Mountain because it's so pretty and the cultural area of the town. And then we started hearing rumors of landslides and elsewhere, but those were rumors. And I think that people coming in, particularly not familiar with mountains, need to be informed if they're buying in a high risk area.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
So now that the legal team's gone, I'll ask the legal questions. So throughout this, and I would greatly appreciate it, staff could help answer these. I think throughout all these conversations, I'm still unclear what the liability is for a homeowner where a landslide or debris flow originates or passes through if there's damage downstream of that debris flow. So if I live down here and my neighbor's up the hill and a landslide triggers or passes through or debris flow passes through and lands on my property, what is the liability of my neighbor? Can I sue that neighbor, or if it's government owned property, can we sue the government for that? I still don't understand the answer to that as we've been having these conversations. The second is, how reliable are our debris flow landslide maps? And the last little question is, can we as a county, if our maps are, we feel good about our maps, do we have the ability to pass landslide and reflow disclosure for buyers and renters, or do we need to ask the state to do that?
I don't have the answers to the majority of those questions. We're asking Nate Pennington to join us in January to talk ordinances, general comp plan rollout. So I think that's a good time. We can ask him not to speak to the specifics, but just like how disclosure might work.
That'd be great.
What I would add, maps are underway. I think we've all heard, about updates to LiDARs, that's coming. The thing I would say regarding liability, I can't speak to private landowner liability. Can't speak more broadly to government liability. Oftentimes we're able to not liable necessarily for those types of things that happen on that property. So there is a word is alluding to that at the moment.
So if a tree falls off of government property and lands on the house next to it, are we liable?
We we would most likely, get the tree, but we have some deciding that to be it's a different term. Right.
With the 50 that you identified, are those in unincorporated areas, or did you do that for all territory within the county's jurisdiction?
Yeah, we're looking at the entire county.
Because I feel like Black Mountain was talking about some concerns there, so. And then were Grovemont and Craigtown the worst ones?
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah, there was so at Karen Creek, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, but that's for sure,
Garen
it's like
Creek.
the like Gale and that, those are the biggest ones.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Karen Creek,
Pretty big
13
one.
people died there, Grovemont, 2 people died there, and having participated in the assessments, I can say that the Garen Creek slide is it's unbelievable in just its scale. Yeah, it's hard to even describe in words what the
Alien health.
yeah, sure. Yes.
Okay.
The note I would, Councilmember Elton just left, but so we did look at municipal slides and did a lot of the work. And then FEMA is working with the municipalities like Black Mountain and Asheville in particular to follow the path that we on remediating landslides if this.
Good question, order of concern. Let's run this down.
Thank you all staff to, I know this is like we said, a pilot program that's happening first in the nation, so thanks for being with us here.
Whenever we assume that maps would just be like GIS maps overlaid with US Geological Survey, oil types and elevations or like.
There is ability index map and a free flow pathway map on our GIS. It has been for like a decade.
Yeah.
But sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I just don't know if the county or gets involved in sort of creating a risk assessment map, if that could potentially insurance rates for a homeowner or something like that. I don't know, just the liability thing is interesting to explore.
Yeah. Like real estate disclosures, isn't there one related to paper and ag property that we get? Or,
Yeah, yeah, you can get, it's within a half a mile of,
yeah,
a
that kind of
chicken,
thing.
poultry house or a
Yeah.
beef operation.
Seems like state thing.
Well, there's, sort of off the cuff thinking, but mentioned the insurance bit. The insurance as an industry does fund research and mitigation. And while this is seen at this point the work in the country, we're not the only Appalachian area that can be hit by storm waters. I wonder if they could be a potential partner in helping to fund some component of maybe, I doubt they'll touch the mitigation for maybe assessment.
The insurance industry itself.
Yeah. Just straight thought. don't know what the politics of that would be either.
I'm so impressed. I'm so thankful. You guys are really like seizing the day for our neighbors in a really marquee place. And it's awesome that, it's the emergency management FEMA's with you on it. So, I mean, the type of path that you guys create could really have major impact for any future community that experiences something like this. So it makes me think, I don't know if you've talked with more depth with the Flood Coalition as they're lobbying on all of our behalf, but good to get them done.
Sure thing. Well, you guys see my face here today, but it's definitely been a team effort. So
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't give kudos to all the folks that have been involved in this process to get us to where we are today. So
Well, please let them know our appreciation.
absolutely.
Hey, Jackie, what's the meeting schedule recommendation?
We are still thinking about quarterly. Yeah, we're thinking, sorry, I'll just tell you this. February 20th, it's May 15th, August, and November. Which is kind of similar to what we did this year, but we did on March planning. So February, May, August, November, there's no, it'd be the third Friday of each of those months. There's no conflict with county holidays or anything.
The nights here, see, Nate come in January. Could we less than that? Okay. Okay.
First meeting of the calendar year.
Okay. What are the board's thoughts on meeting?
Yeah, we can always schedule.
Special meetings are on the table.
Great, yeah, and I'll continue to advocate for, this committee taking on any of the ordinance related, land use related items that staff are already thinking about that kind of fall under the obvious bucket of this committee's original purpose.
Yeah.
Chew on that. I think it's
Yeah,
something I would
to
advocate.
Tim's point, that's really what Nate's gonna be next
Okay.
to discuss. It's like,
Okay.
overall, the process, the comp plan, and sort of what's on the table, what's in the queue in terms of these text amendments, and specifically some of the ones that would be of the most interest to this group. So Nate's gonna be here to talk about that. We'll also continue to talk about additional recovery projects that, again, will fall into the interest of this particular group. Various recovery projects for resilience and renewables. Just all of those things. That's what we'll be bringing to you.
Question, are you interested in a presentation from Anne Marie on water quality and any impacts of Helene and what we're seeing post Helene? And if you'd like that, I can reach out and ask her to join us at a meeting. Yeah.
Much as we discuss water quality in these meetings.
Great. Maggie, we're I think we just finished talking about meeting quarterly and using that as a proposed calendar.
Yeah. And as soon as it's like, we decide on it, I can send the calendar invites this year.
Let's do a field trip calendar going.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do that. Let's go visit the composter.
Seriously.
Composting.
Can't wait for
I'll be sure to serve you on it. I'm gonna have.
We missed the solar farmer. Yeah, wasn't that?
Yeah, that looks great.
It never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did do the rooftop.
Yeah, we did.
That's nice.
Yeah.
We'll be sure to send out the invite to the ribbon cutting for Just so very nice of it.
We went like ballpark when that was.
She did not.
Okay.
I do not know it off the top of my head.
Okay.
We'll get it to you. ASAP.
It's not scheduled yet.
And this schedule was in the agenda, wasn't it? But it was what you sent out to us the other day.
I don't think I sent it as an attachment. If I did, I didn't need to.
I'll just say that, there's a number of issues we discussed today. I'm looking back at the notes from the last meeting, we talked about Bearwise cards. And I just want to point out, I think we talked about, a number of these things came up in our town hall that Councilman Holman and I, Stewart, Brian Turner, last thing, 2 nights ago. So I just want to say, thank you for bringing these great topics forward. These are the things that the community are asking us about. And so this information is really helpful as we,
I also want to know if you should start a bear sterilization program to.
Is that volunteer program? Because I'll volunteer to help out.
Or educating concerns. This is like Parks and Rec. All right, we're on the night, sorry.
We could use some ideas on how to deal with it. That doesn't seem like anyone's come up with like that's a great idea.
It does seem like a bigger problem,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's really becoming a nuisance and
Yeah.
a threat and concern in many neighborhoods, that's real.
Well, from the last meeting, I was asked to do research and I sent that research to Dane about what other communities are doing with
Awesome.
important Bearwise campaigns. So hopefully like they're taking that and doing something.
That's
But
very
I'd be happy to share my results with anyone.
I would love to see, because we can get it back to that neighbor who's asking about it.
Sure, I'm more aware of Gatlinburg. Jackie kind of alluded to it, but in the agenda, next meeting's TBD, we're gonna lock down that schedule, but Jackie's also identified a handful of topics as potential items. We've talked about them, but I just want to reiterate. And so want to use the agenda as a way to plan for the next one. And so next meeting, we're talking about clean waterfront.
They had a slight delay, so they asked if they could do the May meeting.
So some type of water update will track towards Nate on text amendments. And then we also have listed here recovery projects, kind of identify, we've seen those, the plan is adopted, but just reiterating with this group. So if there's anything else y'all wanted to see, we just want to be able to build towards it. Staff.
Is there anything new on the looming landfill issue?
I was gonna say, I'd love to hear an update. Cassie alluded to a application for a C&D clean
Like a
regulation
recycling for
conversion thing, something, yeah. To the extent that that's something to update us on.
Sure. Landfill topic.
Yeah.
C&D.
What are the text amendments? What's the nature of the text amendments needs to talk about?
This is more reiterating kind of our comp plan and the process we identified for text amendments. There's a broad schedule, what's in the first batch and what's next. So reiterating that in light of, we're not bringing specific text to go.
Understand what the kind of Buncombe County facilities look like for energy efficiency across all the buildings. I mean, that's the wheelhouse a little bit up on Cox the other day and looking at health services building at night, and every single light in the office space of that building was on. And I'm just like, this is insane. Why is that happening? I mean, parking garage, of course, but I don't know. I don't know if we have consistent policies that are being implemented across all county buildings, but
Energy usage.
Do we have sensors in like large kind of cube farm areas?
We have occupancy sensors in a lot of locations. I don't know the specifics of each building. That's more than I
a
know.
relatively new building. It seems like there would have been occupancy sensors installed during construction, but
It's a good question. It's a good topic, so we'll map it out to what we can stick into the next meeting versus in May.
My last thought is just anything related to all these pots of money opening up that means staff are scrambling to figure out where your capacity is to chase it, any of that is relevant to this committee. First.
Yeah, like I know we at the city have a big package, in application into HFGP around renewables so that we can have like microgrids and backup power and like even some it's just boring old updating our diesel generator, but I think we have like an 18 project package in. I'm curious if you guys are pursuing any of the renewable goals through HMGP. Love to learn about that if that's thank you.
Lots to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's such a big I mean, there's just it's a big opportunity to move towards renewable goals, with this funding source, so that seems
Yeah, and we submitted a whole bunch of applications.
that's awesome.
Yeah, maybe tied to that, sort of an update on resiliency toward the end of this coming year. I know that like, we made a lot of efforts in battery backups and things like that. But, easy to forget about it 2 years out from the meeting, but I'd like to know kind of what those things look like, how the hubs are prepared. Has it been funded? Your expectations for what we want.
I like that hasn't been funded question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, but yeah, I mean, the short version is, yeah, we can spend a lot of time discussing that. Projects, offer applications that we've submitted, applications for planning on submitting, some of them overlap, there's a lot.
Yeah, I think it's helpful and I bet it's like informing us, but it helps with our lobbying. 'Cause that's like continues to be a thing I spend time on with Raleigh and DC. It was, this is what they want to achieve with it, and it just is helpful.
Okay, well, thank you all. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great weekend, everybody.
Yeah.